book is a gift given to me to share my thoughts and feelings about the precious family God has blessed me with. It is a Mother's Day gift from Melody, May 9th, 1982. Lord, where do I begin? Do I dare to go back to April 10, 1935, when I was born in a country home on the farm while Daddy was turning the separator handle? He had also been born in that same home on October 15, 1905. That's kind of special. I think the love my dad and I shared helps me to grasp the love my Heavenly Father has for me. I adored my dad and followed him everywhere. I have a special mom too. She was born in Oregon, July 3rd, 1910. Her dad died when she was 9 years old. Mom loves music, and my best memories are of her playing the piano. Daddy played the harmonica, and Marilyn, Kathy, and I would sing. One of our favorites is Whispering Hope and the Old Rugged Cross. I have a big brother, Jim, and a little brother, Mike. That is the family I am part of. We didn't have a lot of money, but we had a lot of love. We had to work hard, but there were rewards also. It might be homemade ice cream. The ice used for this was stored in an ice house out by the clotheslines. It was cut into blocks and hauled from the river and stored in sawdust. The milk and cream for the ice cream came from our own dairy cattle. We sold milk and cream to the creamery. Mom and Dad taught us to appreciate the beauty of our environment. Dad brought the moccasin flower from the woods and planted it by our house. I'll always remember the beauty of the pink and white lady slipper. We always looked for rainbows and four-leaf clovers after the rain. Dad always went out after the rain to look for special rocks. He could usually find an agate. He knew the names of all the trees and loved the woods. Mom shares this love of nature, especially the birds and the flowers. Dad was a self-made man. If there was something he didn't understand, he would find the information and study it until he was knowledgeable on the subject. He loved people and would always take time to sit and visit. People liked him also, and he would usually be nominated as chairman or president when serving for an organization. What else can I tell you about growing up on the farm? Well, I was the oldest girl. I am the oldest girl. I do love cooking, and my earliest memory is of standing on a box to mix up a cake for Daddy. I'm sure it was probably heavy as a rock, but he ate it like it was angel food. I credit my mother with a lot of patience as she taught me to cook. Jim and Marilyn liked to be outside, so I got to cook, and they got to milk cows and so on. We all took part in putting up hay. When I was little, I would walk behind the wagon and sometimes find tiny field mice, which I put in my bib overall pocket. One time we put some in Mom's bed, but she didn't appreciate it, that little joke at all. Now I wonder how I could even have touched those things. We had few toys. Paper dolls were a big thing. Mom would usually get us some on her rare trip to town. I think she enjoyed them as much as we. I had a baby doll named Linda Lou, and I practiced being a mother at an early age. Marilyn's doll was Mary Jane. When we got tired of dolls, we took the cats and kittens and dressed them in the doll clothes. They had to ride in a doll buggy and on Marilyn's tricycle. We would use the hay wagon as our ship. I can't recall where we sailed. We played cowboys and always had new cap guns and new outfits for the 4th of July. Marilyn and I made many mud pies decorated with mountain ash berries. One of the necessary chores was pumping water in a big pail and carrying it into the house. For some reason, the pump handle looked good enough to lick. If you have never licked a pump handle, you cannot know the pain of getting your tongue unstuck and having alum put on it. It smarts. We had wood stoves for heat, a cook stove in the kitchen with a reservoir for heating water. Mom made delicious home-baked bread in the oven, and there's nothing better than coming home from school to hot bread and butter. We cut those slices pretty thick. Mom baked beans and made delicious potato soup on that stove also. We had an old-fashioned upright heater in the living room with isinglass doors on it. We children slept upstairs, which was unheated, so we learned to scoot downstairs to get warmed up while we dressed. I understand that at an early age, I stuck my backside too close for comfort, and that Watkins white salve had to be applied. One pastime which we took part in was to hold a crayon to the stove and see the pretty melted colors. Our folks frowned on this activity. We were raised in a disciplined household. We all knew that Dad was the head of the household. He had a temper that was not to be trifled with. One method used in those days was if one did not confess to the deed, then all got punished. A swat from my father's wide farmer's hand was felt through blue jeans and all. I know now that our farm of 149 acres was a beautiful place to grow up on. A lot of it bordered the Big Willow River. In my childhood days, we always put a fish trap in the river in the spring. It was always a big thrill to go with Dad to check the trap. He would pull it in and dump the fish on the green grass. Then he would clean them while I watched, and he'd save a floater for me. Fish were plentiful then and added to our diet. Even though we lived on a farm, we had many meatless meals, so fish were a treat. We had sheep on our farm, and lambing time was a big event. Sometimes a ewe would have twins. A lot of times the weather didn't cooperate, and we would have to bring the new lamb into the house. It would be wrapped in an old towel and placed on the oven door. Then we would fix a bottle with a nipple and teach it to drink. It wouldn't take long for that lamb to catch up in growth, and the suction of eating could pull that bottle right out of your grasp. The lamb's wool looked like fresh cotton, but it sure wasn't. Sheep shearing time was when they lost their coats and looked so bare for a time. The wool was coarse and oily, not a bit like it appeared to be. We also raised pigs on our farm, and nothing is cuter than 10 to 12 little pigs lined up at Mother Pig's dinner table. The poor little runt usually gets pushed out of the way, so he got help getting back to the table. We named everything on our farm. We'll never forget when butchering day came and Pinky Pig ended up on our table. I believe it was Marilyn who refused to eat Pinky. Daddy happened to own a thrashing machine, and thrashing day was a big event. It meant the women of the household would bake lots of goodies, pies and cakes and cookies. There would be morning coffee and noon dinner and afternoon snack and big supper. It would be good and hot, and the men worked to see who could bring their wagons in the fastest and who could throw bundles the fastest. It was a time of good-hearted, warm fellowship and a spirit of cooperation to get a big job completed. I used to be allowed to watch the grain sacks fill and maybe help Dad hold them while he tied them. When the harvest was in at our farm, Dad would hitch up the threshing rig and go on to the neighbors and to other farms. I would guess that books became my friends at an early age. We didn't have a lot of toys, but we used our imaginations and invented games of our own. I can't recall the books that I read, but I'm sure many of the stories were acted out. We loved to dress up in old dresses and high heels. One time in grade school, I got to be Mother Goose. That was a real thrill. When I started school in the first grade, we had to walk up in the woods. School was a one-room building which housed all 8 grades. We had to carry our lunch in a clean syrup pail, and many times one of the big kids would offer to carry it, and later you would find your dessert missing. I'm sure that times were hard for all of our families, but somehow we children didn't grasp this fact. There were a lot of social times centered in the school. There were basket socials, and much time was spent in decorating a shoebox and filling it with a tasty lunch for 2. The bidding was lively, and the fellow came to collect the basket and find the owner. We had Christmas programs and parties and dances. One fellow played a fiddle or violin with great enthusiasm, and many a jig was danced. It was kind of a shame when the school district was consolidated and we had to ride a bus and go to school in Palisade. There were many adjustments to make, but we had good teachers and great cooks. Yes, we had hot lunch, and that was special. One favorite was creamed salmon gravy on mashed potatoes. We had a janitor who played the accordion, so we learned to schottisch and polka during noon hour. Another activity was called release time, during which we were dismissed to go to our respective churches for a time of teaching. We had a neighbor who picked us up on Sunday for Sunday school. We were expected to memorize our memory verses and recite them during church. Our dad and mom were not regular church attenders, but would come to the special programs. Mom was raised as a Methodist, but Dad just didn't have time at this point in his life. Life on the farm wasn't always easy, but it was a time of everyone working together. I usually had to work in the garden, which is a pleasure now, but is W-O-R-K when you're young and want to play. Marilyn and I had to pull weeds for the pigs and filled many a red wagon full of them. One thing Daddy did for us was to let us have our own garden. This spot was usually where the pig pen had been, so was very fertile. We took pride in growing bigger radishes than Mom's or Dad's. New potatoes and fresh peas creamed together were a special treat. Some of the carrots never got to grow very big because we would pull them and wash them off under the pump and enjoy. Canning was a busy time. All that boiling hot water and steamy kitchen, and usually hot weather too. We didn't have a pressure cooker then. We always canned Italian plums, apricots, peaches, and pears, along with everything in the garden. We also made all of our own jelly and jam, so there were currants and plums and berries to pick. Our family especially liked blueberries, so we would pack up to go pick blueberries. We took some food and a tent and usually spent the day picking berries and the evening looking them over and canning them. Another very busy time for farmers is haying time. This meant the hay had to be cut after the dew was off the grass. Then it had to dry for a time. Then it was raked with a dump rake. This left it in piles, and I remember when we had horses, Molly and Maud, to pull the hay wagon to go pick it up. We kids loved to ride on that big wagon load of hay. It smelled so good. The horses pulled it to the barn, and then the wagon was unhooked beneath the big barn door. Inside that haymow was a big hay fork on a pulley. The horses were hooked to a rope outside the barn that was attached to the pulley. So the big fork was pulled down and attached to a load of hay, and then the horses pulled forward, and the big load of hay went up and up into the haymow. There were men up there to mow it back, so it was piled in all corners of the barn. I think I told you how I loved to imitate my dad, wanted to be just like him. I really admired the way he could speak to those horses. Up, Molly, up, Maud, and that big load of hay would go right up. So one time I thought I'd try that too. Only the big fork wasn't attached yet, and the horses pulled an empty fork up, and my dad wasn't too happy with that. I'm sure I didn't do it again. I really can't recall when one of the horses died and Dad had to sell the other. It was then that we got an Alice Chalmers tractor, and I'm sure it made the work easier. And the next chapter will include the birth of my sister Kathy and how she became my live baby doll. Thank you for listening. Okay? Cool?